Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Um, if my voice sounds raspy, I just got back from brunch, and so I had a latte and it kind of dries out my voice a little bit. So if you hear me pausing and like drinking water, I'm sorry. But I want to tell this story time about a girl that got kicked of a leveled up friend group. And I also just kind of want to talk about like what it's like having leveled up friends because I've noticed that a lot of you guys are like, "Oh, I want friends that are not toxic, I want friends that are not going to act trashy and stuff like that." And I agree with you. And so I'm going to just go over kind of the pros and cons of what I've noticed. Oh, and by the way, when I use the term leveled up, what I mean is these are friends who maybe they have some sort of like privileges, for lack of better words. This could be pretty privilege, financial privilege, educational privilege. Maybe they have some sort of business that they own or something. Maybe they're very upwardly mobile. So on this channel, I talk a lot about Blackness and the Black community, but I talk about it from a different perspective. I feel like a lot of people, they only associate Blackness with struggle and they only associate it with like being at the bottom. And I am somebody who has the exact opposite point of view. The majority of people from the Black community that I've interacted with have not been at the bottom. In fact, they've been far from the bottom. So I just kind of want to talk about my experience with that and kind of what it's like. By the way, when I use the term black, I'm talking about both unambiguously black as well as biracial or mixed race black. So one of the pros of having leveled up friends is that there is less jealousy, or at least in my case. So, one of my social climbing goals for this year was to have a friend group. I really wanted a black friend group specifically. I didn't really care what kind of black, whether it's unambiguous, whether they're exoticals, mixed race, whatever. Um, but that was one of my goals, and I really wanted leveled up friends only. So thankfully, I have tailored myself and I carry myself in a way so that I only attract friendships where the women are kind of more like me in terms of vibes and status. By the way, anytime somebody uses that word vibe, like, oh, I'm catching this vibe from you, or this seems like his vibe, anytime somebody says that, what they really mean is this seems like their cultural background. So I just want to let you know, like, that is kind of what that person means. So, one thing that has helped me to analyze things a little bit better is to always understand the meaning of words, know what synonyms people are using, because especially if you're trying to navigate in spaces where people are affluent, they have more manners, they have more etiquette. Not always, but a lot of times people, they're not going to say something like, oh, I didn't want to hang out with her because of her cultural background. Anybody who is smart would never say something like that, but sometimes I've noticed that people will use the synonym like, "Oh, her vibe was off," or "His vibe, I didn't like his vibe when I first met him," or something like that. And when it comes to your cultural background, all of that has to do with how you're perceived. Anytime somebody says anything about your vibe, what they're saying is, I perceive you this way. So, like with me, people say, I have a very classy vibe. So, what they're saying is, I perceive you as being someone who's classy. So, that means that you look classy, you speak in a way that's classy, your jokes, your sense of humor, and how you interact with others is classy. So I would just say for social climbing purposes, be sure to pay attention whenever somebody starts talking about your vibe or the vibe that you give off. And that's something you may want to think about. Like, what kind of vibes do I give off? How am I perceived? How have other people described my vibe? And do I like that vibe? Do I like the vibe that I'm giving off, or do I want to change it? There is no wrong answer. But I would say one thing that I like about having more leveled up friends is that there's just less jealousy. And this is really because they don't have time. Like, they really don't have time to be jealous of you. People, they don't have time to be worried about you. So this is why I have a strong preference to hang out with other women where they have their own things going for themselves. They're too busy enjoying their lives to worry about what the heck I'm doing. And I'm not saying that it's impossible for leveled up women to like be jealous and stuff, but think about the amount of emotional energy that is required to be jealous of someone. In order to like really be jealous to where you're sabotaging people and shit, you have to be kind of like having a lot of free time on your hands. You have to like kind of plan your sabotage out. So usually people that are going out of their way to send emails about you and do all kinds of stuff like that, usually those people don't have a lot of other priorities if they're spending all of their time just trying to sabotage and destroy you. This is why you hear a lot of stories of women who come from kind of these underprivileged backgrounds, and like maybe you have toxic family members who they out of their hometown. They never educated themselves. And so all they have time to do is like sit around and talk shit about you, or they only have time to like do witchcraft spells on you and shit. I have actually had people try to do that kind of stuff to me. Not family members, but I've known of somebody that has literally tried to do like spells and shit, and I just feel like women who are extremely focused on their own level up, they don't have time to go and seek out a psychic or go buy all this different stuff so they can mix oils and try to put a curse on you. So that's a part of why I prefer to stay in kind of the more classy professional social spaces, because I feel like those types of people not only do they not only do they vibe with me a little bit better, but it's like they're too busy building their businesses. You know, they've got their own practices. Oh, and I am going to go into detail a little bit about some of my friends and what my friendship type is. So, another question that you may want to ask yourself is, what is your friendship type? You know how they talk about having a type in terms of dating? Maybe your type is you like someone athletic, you like someone who looks good. I've noticed that my friendship type is actually very similar to the vibe that I give off. So, in terms of friends, my perfect type of friend would be someone who is too busy to be jealous of me because she is doing her thing with her career. You know, I personally, I'm building an online business, so I don't really have time to like text back and forth or stay on the phone for 6 hours with my friends. So I prefer friends who are also busy as well, and then we can just get together on the weekends and stuff like that. So that's one aspect of the type of friend I want, kind of a busy, upwardly mobile woman. Another part of my friendship preference is I prefer friends who have some form of like confidence. Like they need to have a lot of confidence. And I have noticed that confidence is partially based on some of the quote unquote privileges that you may have had. And yes, I know that we live in a very messed up world. It's very messed up that some people have certain privileges, other people don't. Yes, it's very bad. Of course, the whole society that we live in is bad. But I'm trying to talk to you about reality so that you can get out of the bad environment you've been in. I just feel like as women of color, we don't talk about this stuff enough. We don't talk about the subconscious mind or dark psychology or social climbing enough, and so that's the only reason that I use the word privilege. It's because I know that that's a trigger word that's going to get your attention and help you to like listen to what I'm talking about. But a part of my friendship type is someone who has a lot of things going for herself, because again, then she's not going to be in awe of me to the point where she wants to tear it down or she wants to only hang out with me so she can try to like be a carbon copy of me. Another advantage I've noticed of navigating with leveled up women is that they are more interesting people. So that might sound classist of me to say, like, oh, people who are affluent are more interesting. But the only reason that I'm saying that is because people who they have more resources, sometimes they use their money to pay for, it could be singing lessons, it could be piano lessons. I've seen people get tutored for different languages, like they know Italian, they know French. And I just noticed that when I am around other women who are leveled up and cultured, that's really what it is. They're interesting, they're cultured. So they have better conversations. You know, the conversations don't revolve as much around talking shit about others. The conversations revolve around, oh, wow, I went to Italy this summer. You know, I took my boat out and then we went and sailed somewhere, or I took sailing lessons, or I took sailing lessons, or I learned how to fly a helicopter. I don't know, just all kinds of incredibly interesting things. And that just makes it more fun to be around those types of women because they just don't have time to gossip about you. They don't have time to worry about you. If I am taking helicopter lessons, that's what I would be focused on. I do not care about what Tasha is doing down the street or like, does she think she's prettier than me? No, I wouldn't even be thinking about that because I'd be too excited about my own life. So that's another aspect that I do like about navigating with kind of higher class women, like more affluent women or women who are trying to kind of do something with their lives. Another advantage I've noticed when it comes to having more leveled up friends is in terms of networking, it's fantastic. Like actually one of my friends from college, she is an alumni. So you know how you have like the alumni associations and stuff like that. So she actually posted, "Hey, I don't have a job. I haven't had a job for 4 months. If anyone knows of any jobs that I could get, whether it's teaching or just anything random." She basically went onto this group and said, "Hey, I'm willing to do whatever just to get money." Did you know she was actually flooded with DMs and all kinds of people from all kinds of different backgrounds who were offering her different jobs, whether it was temp jobs. Like I remember she also said, "Oh, I'm willing to do some sort of substitute teaching or temporary work." And she was flooded with so many people who were willing to help her. So that's another advantage of hanging out around leveled up people. You know, whatever leveled up means to you. To me, leveled up or leveling up, that means that you're trying to maybe own your own business. This is why I tell all of you guys, start a YouTube channel. That's a very low barrier to entry way to have your own online business. It's free to start a YouTube channel. You're going to be gaining so many skills. You're going to learn how to communicate. You'll learn how to edit. You know, you can do audio editing, video editing. You'll learn about shorts. You're going to learn about search engine optimization and ranking and algorithms and all of these valuable skills. So that's why I say that that's a very good social climbing tool, not to mention the fact that you get to talk about what you're passionate about, but yeah, that's another positive aspect of only being around people who are leveled up. Imagine if you're around friends where all of them are like bums in life and they all have no ambition. Another thing that I really love about being around leveled up women is there's more of a culture of generosity. There's more of a giving culture. And I've unfortunately been taken advantage of because I come from a culture where it's more generous. Not only my Christian background, but also kind of the socioeconomic status of a lot of people I've been around. I've always been the type of friend where it's like, "Oh, hey girl, let me get you some coffee." Or, let me get, "Oh, you forgot your wallet? Let me pay for your lunch." Or, "Hey, I invited you here." I've always tried to be more generous or more like grateful if people help me with something. Like I will always say thank you. Like if my friend gets me, I don't know, a random drink or something. But I've noticed, unfortunately, if I've been around women who lack ambition or feel like they're at the bottom. Like there was one girl in particular, apparently was using me for like money. She was using me to help her with her son. And this is because with that particular friend, she actually was from Mexico. I actually helped her to get citizenship. I helped her to get a social security card. And this is just because of my connections at the time in the city that I was living in. I knew people who worked with Mexican immigrants. And so she continued being my friend, and my mom actually overheard her talking behind my back at this church event one time, and then she was like, "Oh, Exoticals United, like, stop hanging out with her." And I was like, "Oh, what? Like, why wouldn't I hang out with her?" And she was like, "Yeah, she was talking about you saying that you're really nice and you keep on taking her out, because I took her and her son out to like this amusement park because she was my friend, so that's just a part of the cultural background that I came from. If my friend is struggling, or they they seem like a really great person and maybe they need something, or they're struggling with their son, I have always been the type of friend that wants to help them. And my mom overheard her saying that she was gonna try to get me to, like, buy her stuff, and she was gonna try to get me to buy her a new outfit, and how I was helping her with her son, how I took her son to an amusement park, and basically she was kind of, I don't wanna say using me as like a almost like a friendship version of like a sugar mama or something, but that's just something I've noticed about being around women who are more leveled down, or maybe they don't wanna help themselves. Sometimes those types of friends will actually pull you down and they will mistake your kindness for weakness. And I'm pretty sure there are women in this community who have had friends overstay their welcome. Like, let's say you let a friend or family member stay with you for a week, and then it turns into a month, then it turns into 2 months. Then the next thing you know, you're calling the police on them, you're evicting them, you're telling them they have to get out or something. So, one of the pros of only being around kind of leveled up affluent women is that you don't have to worry about that shit. And also, a lot of my friends that I've purposely tried to attract, they are more reciprocal. So, for example, let's say I get the coffee this time, maybe next time she will get the coffee. And even if she doesn't, there's more of a reciprocation with those types of friendships because those women, they value relationships. So I've noticed that when you have some form of social status and you guys can actually relate as pretty girls because you have a form of social status, which is your beauty. Beauty is a form of social power. Like it or not, it's a form of social power. So you know, as a pretty girl, that sometimes people will only be around you because of your beauty, whether it's they want to use you, they want to be a predator towards you, or whether it's, they just want to use you for male attention or use you as bait or something. So, as a pretty woman, you know what it's like to have someone only come into your life because they want to extract from your social status. And it's the same thing for other people who are leveled up in different ways, or maybe they have something else going for them, whether they were born with that particular privilege or they earned it, like money or something like that. Oftentimes in kind of the more leveled up communities, people have a hard time finding genuine people who are reciprocal. And so they place a higher value on relationships and character and etiquette and politeness. And, are you generous? Do you reciprocate? How do you interact with people? Are you grateful? Do you have a thankful heart? Do you have a thankful spirit? I've noticed that that's actually more highly valued in a lot of the affluent communities that I've been in because there are plenty of other people like myself and like you guys who have been used and stuff and they're just tired of it. They're tired of people trying to use them for their money, use them for their body, use them for their social connections. Um Even when it comes to networking, like think about the girls who are related to people in Hollywood or you're related to these very wealthy families. There are going to be a lot of people who try to come and be friends with you and they're not being genuine. So if you are a genuine person, that is highly valued if you're in more of an affluent kind of leveled up setting. So that's another reason why I prefer to stay in those types of settings because integrity, or at least integrity when it comes to your friends or the people that you choose to work with and stuff, that is highly valued because people will sue you if you screw them over. These are the types of communities where people actually will go back and sue you. Like if you start a business with them and you try to run off with the money or something like that, yeah, you may be able to get away with that in an environment where the person doesn't have the resources to sue or they don't have the resource to hire a private investigator. But in the communities where they do have those resources, oh, yeah, that's not going to fly. So I like the fact that for networking purposes, it's actually better. And by the way, everything I'm saying here is just based on my experience. Then I'm going to tell you the story time and how it relates to all this. But another thing is like dating, obviously. So if you hang out with all classy, leveled up women, oftentimes those women, maybe they have family members or friends of family who, that can benefit you if you care about that kind of stuff, or maybe your friend's husband's friend or something. I don't know. Just if you actually care about the dating aspect of it. So now let's get into some of the cons of being around these classier friend groups. And by the way, I'm talking about Black women who are classy or mixed Black women who are very classy and leveled up. So, one of the cons I've noticed, or something that some people may see as a con, is they may cut you off if you are too much drama or if you are not classy enough. So, when I say not classy enough, I'm talking about vibes. So remember, vibes, that's a euphemism for your cultural background. What stereotype do you fit with the way that you look and speak and act? I mean, that's basically a nice way. That's the politically correct way of people admitting out of their mouths that they're stereotyping you. And yes, I know stereotyping is bad, but guess what? Everybody has stereotyped somebody. And so that's why I'm telling you guys this because you like if you want to be perceived a certain way or you want to attract certain types of friends and stuff and you don't want to have to worry about getting into fights or people pulling out box cutters and slashing your face and shit, then, how you're perceived, that's actually really important. But that's one thing I noticed. People will definitely cut you off if you're too much drama, if you're not perceived as being classy enough. I actually have done this before. So there were a couple of girls that I used to hang out with, but because of some of their behaviors, I didn't cut them off as in ghost them, but I decided to downgrade them from me hanging out with them in a group, I downgraded them just to acquaintances. So this means that, I may say hi when I see you, we might have mutual friends and stuff, but as far as me inviting you out with me, absolutely not because I don't want to be in a classy brunch place and then you're like twerking or you stand up on the table or you hike up your skirt, you hike up your shorts or something like that. Those are the types of things where you are going to have people maybe looking at you sideways if you want to be in kind of this classy friend group. And I'm guilty of doing that as well because I care about how I'm perceived too. And when I say I care about how I'm perceived, I'm not saying it in a performative way because I genuinely believe that my classiness, that's my actual vibe. So I don't feel like how some people are, where they say, "Oh, I need to be on my best behavior because I'm with these types of people." I'm not really like that. And I'm not shaming you if you are, especially if you don't come from that cultural background. But for me personally, I just feel like being classy goes better with my personality. So if I'm around women who are acting like really, I guess, ratchet and stuff, then it makes me feel uncomfortable if the environment is not a ratchet environment. If it is a ratchet environment, okay, fine. If we're at a concert or something, yes, then I'm going to dance and I'm going to like do whatever. But if I'm at a sit down place, no, I'm not going to get up and randomly start doing that. But that's one of the cons. You will get cut off, but you may not know that you're cut off. So I noticed though with three of the friends that I cut off, because I cut off three girls, they don't know that they're cut off. Well, one of them kind of knows because I can tell because anytime like we're hanging out or something, let's say we have mutual friends and like if she knows that I'm going to be there or I know she's going to be there and these other groups of girls are going to be there, I may like pass on that event or and so this actually reminds me of a post that I saw on Lipstick Alley where some girl was talking about how some women have exclusive friend groups. And you know what? I actually have to agree with that. So at first, when I first saw that, I was thinking, oh no, that's all in her head. But now that I'm thinking more deeply into it, that's actually true. A lot of women who are very classy, they are exclusive when it comes to where they are seen. They're exclusive when it comes to the types of friends that they hang around. I personally prefer to hang out with friends who are not messy. So, you know how you may have that friend where it's like they're friends with you, but then they're also friends with your enemies? I don't do that shit. I mean, I'm not shaming you if you're like that, but I personally I can't have people like that in my circle because I don't want to be around someone who is like laughing it up with my enemies when I'm not around. That doesn't sound very smart. And also, sometimes your friends, if you're trying to level up, your friend can actually run back and tell your enemies what's going on with you, or like they can give intel about you. And so, if you care about your privacy, and I've noticed actually a lot of classy women really care about their privacy a lot. And so they don't want all of their personal business out there. They don't want people to know where they just bought their house or, where they live, what they're investing in, who they're dating. And, just they don't want everybody to know all the details. So I know that I'm actually like that too. So if I know that somebody is friends with somebody that I dislike, I'm just not even going to, like, that person will be downgraded. They will be downgraded from friend to just acquaintance. Another thing I've noticed about classier friends or hanging out with classy women is they will not usually start a public confrontation with you. So they will be nice to your face, but behind your back, though, you may be cut off. So how do you know if you're cut off? Well, I'm actually going to get into that. Another thing I've noticed is group chat culture or group culture or kind of cliques, clickiness. I guess that's a better way to say it, clickiness. You know how some people say, oh, you're acting like a high schooler, you're acting like we're in college. Well, life is actually like that. So, get over it. I don't want to say get over it in a rude way, but it's like, yeah, that's how human beings are. If you feel like someone's toxic, you're not going to hang out with them. I mean, I would hope that you only hang out with cliques that are, I don't know, uplifting to you. But that is something that I've noticed is more prevalent in kind of these classier spaces. There's more of a culture of clicking up with others. So think about sororities or fraternities. This is kind of a microcosm of that. I feel like that's a small example. Even like networking groups, alumni associations, those are almost like cliques in a way, right? Like, oh, hey, we all graduated from USC. Okay, we all are a part of this accounting group. We are all a part of this sorority. We're all tridelts. So that's definitely another aspect of affluent culture that I've noticed. It's more clickiness. So clicks can either benefit you or they can be detrimental. I just think it depends on how well you socialize. If you want to hang around more leveled up women, you're going to have better social skills because I have noticed a pattern where people who have wealth or they have some form of status that they want to protect, they are more analytical in their interactions with people. I know that I am actually very analytical. I will watch people meticulously before I decide whether or not we are going to be like, I don't know, good friends or whatever. I will kind of watch their behaviors, not just with me, but also their behaviors with others. So, for example, I don't like hanging out with women who are rude to wait staff, people who are rude to baristas and stuff. I used to be a barista. I used to work at restaurants. So I don't like hanging out with girls who are like disrespectful to people in service positions. That's something that I watch. So, one question you may want to ask yourself is, do I have any behaviors where other people might think like, hey, she's very rude or like she's very disrespectful? Another thing that I've noticed will get somebody cut off is if I see them gossiping about somebody else, especially if I just met them. Like, let's say it's my first day of work and then they're automatically gossiping about my coworker who sits next to me within one day. I'm going to actually give them the side eye because I'm going to be thinking, wait a minute, why are you already talking shit? It's almost as if you're doing the same thing that narcissists do, which is you're trying to kind of ruin that person's reputation before I have given them a chance to prove themselves to me socially. So you're already trying to destroy them behind their back with a new person. That's a red flag to me. So a lot of classier people are they will kind of analyze your behavior. This is why I say that people who are in survival mode, like if you grew up in a family that was constantly in survival mode and stuff, you probably didn't know about social dynamics as much. I'm sure that that was not a conversation, or if it was, maybe it wasn't a conversation very often, like talking about psychology, talking about mental health, talking about sociology, which is the study of society. Another con of hanging out with kind of leveled up women is your friendship can actually get expensive if you do not have the budget to go on the girls' trips, to go to the dinners or the concerts or the festivals or the brunches or out for coffees and stuff like that. So, if you're one of those girls who likes having friends where you do stuff with them, which is what I like, then I would recommend creating a monthly budget to where you're like, okay, I can spend $100 a month on going out. So that means I can go out for coffee one time, I can go to I don't know, a concert or something, and that's it. So that's something else that I've noticed. You kind of have to think about that if you're in a classier friend group. The activities that they're going to be engaging in, they may be like more classy activities, or they may actually ask you for money. They may ask you to pool money with them. Like I've done this with my friends before where I will cash app my friend. One of my friends had like a paint and sip, and we all like went and did it together or whatever. And so I actually cash apped her so that she could plan, so that we could get like the venue and all that and get it all set up. So that's another aspect of being around women who are like very leveled up. They're very organized. And so they're going to want to go to classier events, which cost money. And even if it's free, like let's say you're going to some free event, what are you going to wear? How are you going to dress? And for me, that part is actually fun. I love being in bougie environments. You guys know that's my vibe, or at least that's the vibe that I try to give off. And when I use that term like bougie or like I don't know, uppity. Well, I don't know if I would say uppity, but when I use the term bougie, all I mean is like classy or kind of carrying myself with class. Think about how a classy event is run versus someone who's sloppy. So yeah, that's something you want to think about though. It can get expensive if you want to hang out with friends where they're taking international trips. Like I actually had to say no to multiple girls' trips this year because I actually couldn't afford to go, I can't go to all of these different places every couple of weeks or every month. And that's another thing too. I think that if you are going to hang out with other women who are very classy, it's okay to be vulnerable with them. I've noticed a culture actually in struggle communities where vulnerability is actually bad. It could harm you. And I understand why, because you're in an environment where it's not safe to be vulnerable. It's not safe to discuss, like, hey, I'm trying to save money, or hey, I can't really afford that. Maybe you'll be made fun of or something. But I've noticed that in other environments where people have more of an abundance mindset, they're more cultured, they're aware of mental health and stuff like that. If you just tell them, like, oh, hey, I've already planned all of my trips for the year, then it's not a big deal. If they're a true friend, they're not going to shame you or like make fun of you or anything. And by the way, even when it came to my friend group, I was not the only girl in the group who said, "Hey, I've already got my stuff planned for the year." So it's totally normalized to say that, but I've noticed like in my dad's background, for example, some people might try to make fun of him and be like, "Oh, you're a bum," or like, "You're a bum bitch," or something, or so I've just noticed that there's kind of more toxicity if you're in an environment where people just sit around and talk shit versus a more classy environment. They understand saving money. They understand the concept of, hey, I have to save my money, or I have to budget, or I have to kind of plan out my calendar. I have to put this in my calendar. So it's not as big of a deal. Another thing that I have noticed about being around the more bougie women is they might make jokes that can be offensive if you are kind of a social justice warrior or if you're very sensitive. So, in terms of jokes and stuff, it's not as bad as like hood culture where it's like they're just roasting you, just sitting all going around a table and roasting you. No, I haven't noticed that. But for example, I don't know, like, actually, one time I made a comment, and I didn't realize, like, how bad it sounded. So, there was this one girl, one of the friends of mine, she was talking to this guy who worked as a maintenance person, and then she was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm talking to John," and I was like, "The maintenance guy?" So, technically, if you are a maintenance person or if you come from a family of maintenance people, that comment may be offensive to you. So that's another thing I've noticed. Sometimes if you're around people who are just not used to being around other cultures and stuff, they might make these little comments to where you're like, wait, what does that mean? And actually, I think that a lot of people, they get offended without knowing the context sometimes. And I'm guilty of that myself. But yeah, if you want to be around like a lot of classier, more affluent people and stuff, I would say you may have to kind of open your mind a little bit and not be a high conflict personality. That's a really good point actually. High conflict personalities don't do well in classy environments. I mean, just saying. So imagine if Cardi B were at the White House at a gala and then like she gets into a fight or something like that. Actually, she did get in a fight, I think, with like Nicki Minaj or somebody at some sort of gala. I don't know if it was the Met Gala. I don't know. Somebody threw a shoe at the other one. So that's the type of that's how you would look in a classy environment. You would just look out of place where it's like, "Oh my god, there are people fighting and shit." Like, really? Another aspect that I have observed with affluent women, like pretty girl friendship groups, is group chat culture or cliques and stuff. So sometimes you're a part of the WhatsApp group, but then maybe they have a smaller WhatsApp group off to the side, and maybe you're not a part of that group. Or maybe they have a little, I don't know, an Instagram DM group, a Facebook group, some sort of social media group, a text messaging group. So there are lots of groups within a group within a group, or like a clique within a smaller clique. I've just noticed that there's more gatekeeping. And it's not in a malicious way, it's just because if you are affluent, if you have wealth or status or something that you want to protect, you don't want to give everybody access to it. And I'm the exact same way. I don't want to give everybody access to me. Everybody can't just email me and get a response. Everybody can't just comment on my channel and get a response. Everybody can't just make a video about me and get a response. No, I try to practice selectivity and exclusivity, and I've noticed that that is just a part of the culture if you are going to be dealing with leveled up friends. Another thing I've noticed amongst leveled up women that I've been around is they care about your family of origin and they care about your hobbies. If you do not have a lot of interesting hobbies, if you're not a good conversationalist, you may struggle in scenarios with like very classy, cultured women. So I'm thinking about like Michelle Obama sitting next to somebody who's just they only lived in the same hometown, they lived in the same projects for their entire lives. Maybe they only watch TV and that's it. Maybe they've never traveled anywhere. I'm not saying that they can't be friends, but I'm just saying that the cultural differences between that type of woman and like a Michelle Obama, their differences may be so great to the point where their friendship may not work. And another thing that I've noticed about kind of classier leveled up women is that there is a gossipy culture. Like it's still very gossipy, but I've noticed that the gossiping is for a different reason. So in leveled down cultures, they're gossiping usually out of jealousy, but in leveled up cultures, usually they're gossiping as a way to protect themselves. So, hey, so and so is a scammer. They're gossiping and saying, hey, this person is a creep. Like that's something that some of my friends have gossiped about. Like, hey, so and so is a creep. This other person is a scammer. Hey, so and so person is like a famous red pill podcaster. These are all conversations that um, some of my friends have actually had. And it's more so as a way to protect yourself. It's more so a way to protect yourself emotionally because people who are in kind of these exclusive friend groups and stuff, they value their space, they value their time. They're not going to put their energy into toxic people who are just going to come in and drain them. And so I've noticed that gossip is actually a protection mechanism that a lot of women might use. Something else that people have gossiped about in my circles is dating. Like, hey, do you know of John Smith who says that he works at this oil and gas company? Oh, okay. What's the name of the company? Because I know that so and so works there. Can you verify that he actually works there? And then boom, the guy's exposed. Or, like I've actually been around people where they will say that they work a certain job and then somebody at that actual company will verify, no, he's not an engineer. I actually have a story about this. Somebody was able to figure out the income of a certain guy that I was like talking to in the past. And so there are just all types of ways that people will gossip and try to figure out the truth because a lot of people who have some form of status, they're used to people lying to them. They're used to being lied to. I know a lot of you guys can relate. If you're a pretty girl and a guy just wants to sleep with you, oftentimes he's going to lie. He's going to say, "You're my preference," or "I am a faithful guy," or "I'm not a cheater." It's like, of course you're going to say that because you're just trying to get something out of me. So that's something else that I've noticed about women who are leveled up and classy. Gossip is actually used as more of a protection mechanism. They will try to warn each other about certain things to prevent the other person from getting screwed over. So, in terms of some of my friends who are classy, so two of them work in engineering. One of them is a doctor. One of them is a business manager. And then there's me. And by the way, all of these women, I consider them to be leveled up because number one, I've noticed they all have like pretty privilege of some sort. Number two, they all have like very good careers. I've noticed that I'm actually one of the least educated I'm one of the least educated out of all my friends because a lot of them have bachelor's degrees, they have their PhDs or they have a JD or something like that. Wait, did I say bachelor's or master's? I only have my bachelor's, but I've noticed a lot of my friends, they have masters or maybe they have two bachelor's degrees or something like that. Me and the two engineering girls and the business manager, we all started like vibing really well. And we met at one of these groups. I told you guys about the different social events that I go to. I've told you guys that I do like different networking groups. I've spoken at a high school before. So just I try to like get really involved in the city that I live in because that's a very good way to make leveled up friends who are actually doing shit with their lives. So they don't have time to be jealous of you. But anyway, I met these ladies and we vibed really well. Like all of us were vibing and talking. So, fun fact, I noticed that three of them were sorority girls. So a couple of them are like deltas, a couple of them were like in the AKA sorority. And they started talking about maybe their different colleges that they went to or the different like grad schools that they went to and stuff. And I noticed that we were all kind of vibing well, and we met at one of these local groups that I go to. And one of the things that they do in this group is they will all go out for pizza, or we might go to like a brewery or something like that. So we were at one of the little breweries, and I don't drink, by the way. I don't drink or smoke, but some people do. And we were all talking about just everything, like our professional lives. We were talking about our dating lives and stuff. We were just talking about the types of hobbies that we wanted. And we were all sitting at the table with other women. There were lots of women. Like one of them actually happened to be an unambiguous girl. The rest of us happened to be exoticals. And we were all vibing and talking about our hobbies. And I noticed the one unambiguous girl, she was not talking about any of her hobbies, or like her hobbies didn't really match ours. I noticed that, like, for example, one thing that we all had in common was that we all had these very professional jobs or professional backgrounds. And this one girl, she happened to not have a professional background, which is totally fine. I personally do not judge based off of your profession. By the way, anytime somebody asks you, what do you do? They are asking that for social status reasons. They are asking that because they are kind of saying, how far have you social climbed? So some people, they get pissed off by you asking that, and then other people, they understand why you ask that. I personally do not ask girls like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" Because I understand how that can come off as rude. I personally don't choose my friends based on socioeconomic status alone. If your socioeconomic status is low, I will kind of, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't like judge it, but for example, there's this one girl who she got downgraded from friend to like acquaintance, and this is because she was kind of struggling or whatever. I remember got her I got her like maybe a movie ticket or some snacks, something very simple. And she was like, "Okay, yeah, can you get me the stuff and then I'll cash app you?" And then like she didn't cash app me. Okay, well now that girl, she messed herself up because now we haven't hung out since then, like, I haven't talked to her since then. I don't go to any events with her and stuff because I don't want friends like that. And so sometimes when it comes to friends hanging out with each other based on socioeconomic status, it's because you're trying to prevent shit like that from happening. So, yes, of course, if she would have just said, "Hey, do you mind, like, can I just share with you? Can I share like some popcorn with you?" Or if she would have just been honest and said, "Hey, I actually can't afford this right now," then I would have had no problem just getting her ticket or her popcorn or whatever and been like, "Oh, of course, like it's not a big deal. You're my friend." Like, friends are there for each other. But because she basically like lied and said, "I'm going to cash app you back," I didn't care about the $20 part. I cared about the lying part. I don't want someone in my vicinity that lies to me about money. That's a very big deal to me. Don't lie to me about money. Don't say, "Oh, I'm going to pay you back, tomorrow," and then you don't pay me back. That is very trashy in my opinion. That's very trashy. That's very tacky, especially if I see you next time and then you don't say anything about it, because I know I'm not the type of person that's going to say anything about that. I will just let it go because I understand that if you don't have the money to give, you should never let somebody borrow. So I actually would have just purchased her the stuff. I would have just literally given her the money if she truly needed it and was honest. But because she was like dishonest, I have never mentioned it and said, "Hey, where's my $20?" But at the same time, I don't hang out with that girl anymore. So that's an example of like me not wanting to hang out with them. And it kind of was based on socioeconomics and morals in a way. But anyway, back to the other story. So all of us, the Exoticals, and then there was one unambiguous girl, we were just talking and stuff. And I noticed that we started talking about the whole dating aspect and kind of like going out and how we like to dress. We all love the color pink. That's one thing that we all had in common. We were all like, oh, we like pink. Like, pink is so pretty. Like, that looks really good. And one girl brought up, yeah, the color pink looks really good on my skin tone. And she happened to have kind of a lighter skin tone. But I noticed that the other girl, she looked over at her kind of thinking, I don't know what she was thinking. So I didn't make any assumptions. I was just, I just noticed it though. Um, and then all of the rest of us, we all got excited. We were like, oh, yeah, I love pink too. And we just kept going on with the conversation. And then another thing I noticed was later on at the table, this other girl, who was like a classy girl, she brought up like, oh, I like going to vineyards or I like going to fancy breweries or, just kind of like her hobbies and stuff, like going to paint and sips or whatever. I like mingling and socializing. So the rest of the four of us, we were all saying that too, like, oh my gosh, yes, I love meeting new people and kind of like socializing and standing there. You know how you kind of stand around and you kind of like have your drink in your hand. For me, I'm going to have like a ginger ale or something in my hand because I don't actually drink, but I will get like a ginger ale or a Shirley Temple or something and I'll have my cute little cup. Um, but I noticed that the one unambiguous girlie, she was not really talking as much or saying as much. And then I remember I tried to include her in the conversation. I was like, oh, hey, what about you, Sarah? Like, let's pretend her name is Sarah. I'm like, yeah, what about you, Sarah? What do you like to do? And she was like, oh, well, I don't really like going out as much because sometimes as a woman of color, like people are kind of staring at me a lot and I just feel like they're being racist. So we were in the middle of talking about fun stuff. We were talking about having fun, going to these different events, and she brings up feeling like people are being racist against her. And so again, I did not judge that. And so we got into a mental health conversation from there. And we were like, "Oh yeah, like I totally get it. We all have had similar experiences." And then I talked about having gone to therapy and stuff, and then all the other girls about having gone to therapy and like gone to a psychiatrist. One girl at the table, she even talked about how she had anxiety and, so it was a totally normal, we were all being vulnerable and stuff. And then I noticed that the other girl, she did not express, she just wasn't, she didn't want to talk as much about like the mental health side or like kind of how to overcome these negative feelings. She kind of brought the conversation back again to, oh, yeah, like, people fetishize she happened to have a darker complexion, and she was like, "People fetishize my, skin tone, and, like, I don't like that." And then once again, we comforted her at the table, and we were like, "Oh, yeah, of course, like, we totally understand as well," being even though we are different types of blackness or different shades of blackness, we totally we get that, like, feeling fetishized. And so then we still brought the conversation back again to like our family backgrounds and stuff. So I talked about my family background. I talked about kind of coming from all these generations of pastors and church people and like Christian and stuff. And then it turns out that some of the other girls, they also came from like these Christian conservative types of backgrounds too. So we were all kind of vibing based on that. And I noticed the other girl, like the one girl who happened to be unambiguous, she did not want to talk about her family background, which again, that's totally fine because, you don't owe us anything. Like you don't have to talk about that. And so as the night ended, we all exchanged phone numbers. Like I exchanged phone numbers with everyone and I was like, "Hey, can I get your number? Can I get your number?" And then basically what happened was we ended up creating this WhatsApp group. And then I noticed that some of the other girls after that night was over, um, the other girl ended up texting the rest of us individually, not the unambiguous girl, but like the girls that were vibing well. And they were all like, "Hey, do you guys want to go to this event that's coming up?" And basically, it was like a very classy event. And the only girls that kind of got invited were myself and all the other women who were kind of like more positive and carefree. And I know one girl that did not get an invite to this event happened to be the unambiguous girl. And so I remember thinking about this and I was thinking, okay, is this could this have been based on things like I don't know, maybe her background? And I couldn't help but think to myself, I wonder if she is going to think that this is because of her phenotype or something like that. And I'm not saying that she is going to, but that is something I thought about. Like when we were at the table, all of the other girls, we were all having very carefree conversations about, like, I don't know, wearing pink and going to events and doing all this fun stuff. And this one girl, the one girl who didn't get invited to the next thing, she her actual conversation style was different. Like looking back and kind of examining it, and the only reason I'm saying this is because when we were at the other event, the girls actually brought it up. And somebody was like, "Oh, where's Sarah?" From the last lunch thing. And then two of the other girls were like, "Oh, yeah, we just didn't feel like she vibed well with us, with like our, I don't know, kind of our personality or like what we want to do." And I actually thought about it and I was like, well, yeah, that actually is true because I don't want to be around somebody that's going to complain and stuff, or someone that's going to bring everything back to like how life is unfair, and that sort of rhetoric, especially if I'm just trying to vibe and like have fun. I just feel like everything doesn't have to be a struggle. So I've noticed that if women have this struggle mindset of like, oh my God, I look so ugly in my outfit, or oh my God, you guys are all dressed up, I'm not dressed up, oh my gosh, you guys, your makeup looks so good, my makeup looks like trash. Friends like that, those are more so the Debbie Downers. And so some women actually don't want to be around that. So with this particular girl who kind of like got kicked out of the friend group, basically, if I had to compare kind of like the conversation style and the personality types, all of the other girls, what we all had in common was the fact that all of us were excited about life. And I noticed that the other girl, she was more like, "Oh, I'm just trying to like get things together and I'm kind of like overwhelmed. My plate is full." You know those girls where every time you say hi to them, they're like, "Oh, I'm so busy." Like if you say, "Hey, how are you?" They're like, "Oh my God, I'm so busy and I'm overwhelmed and the kids are getting on my nerves and then like my marriage is falling apart and then my job is going bad." And you're like, "Oh, okay." And then you kind of don't want to invite them out because they just told you that their whole life basically sucks. So it's like, okay, if you're dealing with all this stuff, maybe you shouldn't be out and about. Maybe you should just focus on that or kind of recovering and healing from that. But I've definitely noticed that there is more exclusivity, and it's almost as if certain personality types thrive more versus like others. So, another thing that I happened to notice about the one girl that was not vibing as well was her clothing style and kind of her aesthetic, I guess. So I will say they are going to look at your aesthetics and they're I don't want to say that they're going to like straight up judge negatively, but they will kind of think to themselves sometimes like, "Oh, okay, does this vibe match my vibe?" And I'm only thinking about that because, for example, with my friend who lifted up her skirt and started dancing and stuff, like that's unacceptable to me. That's unacceptable behavior. Of course, I didn't say that because it's her life. She can do what she wants. She's grown. So who am I to tell her what to do? But in my mind, I was thinking to myself, okay, her behavior doesn't go with my aesthetic. Like showing your butt cheeks in a public place when nobody asked you to and you're not getting paid for it, that doesn't go with my personal aesthetic. I wouldn't do that. And so I have noticed that that is something that happens culturally if you're dealing with kind of more classy, leveled up friends. So I have noticed, because this happened to me in college too, where um, actually, this has happened to me multiple times where I've had friends or other girls who are kind of like salty at the fact that I don't hang out with them. They'll be like, "Who are these other girls that you're hanging out with?" And sometimes I've had people say that my friend groups are like bougie or stuck up or you think you're better. And looking back, it's not that those girls think they're better. It's more so that they just happen to fit with each other's vibe more. Their lifestyles align and kind of like the way that they carry themselves aligns more versus just mixing and mingling with everyone. Like, even when I look back to college, I remember some of my friends getting mad because they were like, "You didn't invite me to the party." Well, they actually weren't friends, honestly. They were more like acquaintances. But it's like, I remember I was thinking, why would I invite five additional girls to this party that I'm going to. Because I remember I was in a room with about 5 girls and they all confronted me. This is when I was a teenager. But looking back, I remember saying to them, why would I invite a big, huge gang of girls? Like, that doesn't even make sense. If it's a limited event where, only a certain amount of people can come, or you have to purchase you have to purchase tickets or something. Why would I just randomly wait around for like 5 girls, especially if they're not proactive and saying, hey, do you want to hang out? Do you want to go to this event? Do you want to go to that event? Like, if they're not saying that, it's not my job to create a social life for you. So I've noticed that some people who are not proactive about where they want to hang out and stuff, they kind of passively wait for others to invite them out instead of them like sending in messages or sending texts out to their friends and saying, "Hey, you want to go here? You want to go there?" So because they're not proactive and they don't try to keep up with their friendships and stuff, they get mad when the friendships fall apart. And it's like, well, no, it takes two people to be in a friendship. Why is it always just one person that has to like invite you everywhere? Like, no, you can also text them and be proactive and say, "Hey, I want to hang out. Do you want to go grab a coffee? Do you want to go to this one? Do you want to go to this vineyard?" So, yeah. Um, in terms of the girl who kind of like got kicked out, she's probably sad. I shouldn't even call it being kicked out, but it's more like they feel excluded. I've noticed that sometimes if you are a desirable friend, if you're the leveled up friend who goes to all the fun events and stuff, the girls who don't get into your friend group, they're going to be sad. Uh, Especially if they see you posting on social media like, "Oh, I went to this fun event, I went to this vineyard, I went to this paint and sip thing." They might try to message you and be like, "Oh, I wish I could have gone," or like, "Why didn't you invite me?" That used to happen to me, but I've cut those people off. But yeah, in terms of the one girl who did not go to the particular event, I do feel like kind of this Debbie Downer mindset or kind of like a lack of confidence hindered her from being able to connect with such leveled up women. Have you ever been around those girls where they can't socialize properly if the girl is pretty or if she's smart, if she's educated, if she has a lot of connections and stuff? Some girls actually will get intimidated by you, and the leveled up girl, she can pick up on that. And I could tell, just hanging out with all those girls, I could tell that the one girl, she was kind of intimidated almost, or like not exuding as much confidence and not as much of a carefree attitude, if that makes sense. And I've also noticed like these high conflict personalities, those personalities also don't do well. Like if we're at dinner and you're bringing up like Trump or I don't know, just politics, you want to get into a political argument or you want to argue about random basketball stats or something, I don't know, then, that could make people kind of like not want to be around you, because if you're going out to have fun, you don't want to go out so you can argue. You don't want to go out so you can like feel ugly. That's another thing. I've noticed that women who feel pretty, um, or at least for me, I like hanging out with other women who feel pretty as opposed to hanging out with women who feel ugly, if that makes sense, or they feel like, "Hey, you guys are so dressed up. I'm not as dressed up as you guys. Oh, where are you guys going? Oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out. Oh, the parking is horrible." Or, they're always finding a flaw. That kind of takes away the fun. But anyway, that's just some stuff that I have noticed being around leveled up exoticals. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.